In today's video, I'm going to share one of my all-time favorite recipes with you. It's my keto pinky bar slice. Growing up in New Zealand, the pinky bar was my favorite candy bar. If you've never heard of a pinky bar before and you're wondering what it is, it's basically a raspberry marshmallow that's covered in gooey caramel, dipped in chocolate, and trust me, it is so yummy. Together, we'll be making the pinky bar slice base, the gooey caramel, then the raspberry marshmallow layer, and finally, the chocolate top. So let's get going. To make the slice base, you're going to need almond flour or almond meal. Look for the finest grain almond meal or almond flour that you can, because that will give your base the nicest texture. You're also going to need some butter, or you can use coconut oil if you don't want to use butter. The sweetener that I'm using is allulose. I have an entire video dedicated to my favorite keto essential baking ingredients. In that video, I talk about what allulose is as a sweetener and what the other options are that you can use if you can't get allulose, which I'll leave a link to in the cards above. But this is what's going to make my base nice and sweet. I'm also going to be using an egg. I like to use free-range eggs, a pinch of salt, and I like to use pink Himalayan salt, and some vanilla. The caramel in this pinky bar slice is a gooey, chewy caramel, and the reason why it stays that way is because I'm using the sweetener allulose to make that caramel. I have made a couple of different keto sugar-free caramels, which I have the recipes for linked in the description box below. So if you want to try out some other keto caramels, make sure you try those recipes. But to make this caramel today, I'm going to be using allulose, cream, and butter. When it comes to your butter, make sure that the ingredients on the butter is just salt and cream. And the cream that I'm using is called runny cream or pure cream in New Zealand. It's also known as heavy whipping cream in America. For the raspberry marshmallow layer, I'm going to be using gelatine powder, allulose as the sweetener, raspberry food essence. If you can't find raspberry food essence, then you can use any kind of other essence or extract that you prefer, vanilla, water, and also a little pinch of cream of tartar. And our final layer is so easy. It's just the chocolate top layer, and that's 2 ingredients, chocolate and coconut oil. The first thing we need to do is to preheat our oven to 180 degrees Celsius or 355 degrees Fahrenheit, and I am using a fan-forced oven. I find that it's easier to make the biscuit base using a microwave-safe jug, because this way you can just melt your butter and then add in all the other ingredients and mix it well. When I'm baking, I like to use kitchen scales just to make sure that I'm getting the right amount. These are just cheap ones from Kmart. The first thing we're going to do is add in 100 grams of butter. And we want this to be melted so that we can mix in the other ingredients. So I'm gonna pop this in the microwave and just melt it down. The butter is now nice and soft, which means that I can combine my other ingredients in here and mix everything together well. I've added in 170 grams of almond flour, and now I'm going to add in my sweetener, which I'm using allulose, but you could use any kind of keto-friendly sweetener that you like for this. I'm going to add in a little pinch of salt and a teaspoon of vanilla. What I like to do is just use the lid to measure vanilla. That's approximately a teaspoon. And the last ingredient for the slice base is 1 egg. I like to use a fork to mix it because I find that this is just the easiest way. And you'll see it's quite a wet base mixture. The mixture is really well combined now. Something to bear in mind when you're using almond flour in recipes is that different batches can completely vary in how dry they are. So you might be using the exact same amount of almond flour, but it's a different batch or a different brand, and you could find that it's a drier consistency overall. So you do really need to stay flexible as you're baking and as you're making treats. If you need to add something to make it bit thinner, then add some more butter, or if it's looking too wet. I'm really happy with how the slice base mixture is looking, so now it's time to line a baking tin. This is a 9x9 tin or a 23 centimeter by 23 centimeter baking tin, and I'm using non-stick baking paper to line my baking tray. This is really important because otherwise it's really hard to get this slice out. I find that the easiest way to spread this mixture is just by using the back of a fork. Because it's quite a wet mixture, it does take a little bit of time to get it all evenly distributed, but you do want to try to keep the slice base as even as possible, just because it's going to help you out later as you add in the next layers. Now the slice base is ready for the oven. You're going to bake it in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes or until this base is golden brown. In a saucepan, you're going to add all of your caramel ingredients. That's half a cup of allulose, 120 grams of butter, and half a cup of cream. The caramel is done. It is a rich golden brown color. It is thick and looks so good. The slice base should have already come out of the oven and be cooling. The next step, once you have your caramel made perfectly, is to add it to the slice base. Once you add in your caramel, you can then pop the slice into the fridge. The slice base and the caramel have been cooling in the fridge, and now it is time to add on the raspberry marshmallow layer. The first thing you need to do is add 1 cup of your sweetener of choice. What you're going to be doing is adding in water and making a sugar syrup in here. While my sugar syrup comes to a boil, I'm going to add my gelatine and a bit more water in here to let the gelatine bloom. To make the marshmallow, you're going to need to use an electric whisk. We're going to pour the sugar syrup into the gelatine and mix at the same time. Add in your raspberry essence and also your vanilla. You're just going to add the marshmallow layer on top of the caramel and the base and just smooth it over as best you can, and then return this back to the fridge, or you can put it in the freezer to speed up the setting process if you prefer. I'm so excited because now it is time to put on the final layer of this pinky bar slice. I've changed clothes into comfies because it's been a couple of hours now. I've just let the marshmallows sit in the fridge and firm up, but now it's chocolate time. When you're melting down the chocolate layer, so you're adding in the chocolate and the coconut oil together, if you're doing it over the stove, it's so important to do it at a low heat, slowly. If you try to melt it too quickly, you can burn your chocolate. That's because lots of keto-friendly chocolates that are made using sweeteners instead of sugar can just burn super easily. So once you have your chocolate nice and melty, it's looking good, just take it off the heat and let it cool down completely before you add it to your marshmallow. And then we're done. The pinky bar slice is completely set. I've taken it out of the fridge, and as you can see, we've got the base, the caramel, the marshmallow, and the chocolate top. The last thing to do is just to slice it. What I like to do is make sure that I leave this out at room temperature for about 30 minutes, just because it makes it a little bit easier to slice without everything breaking and falling apart. The slice definitely does take a little bit of patience because you need to allow each layer enough time to set. But I promise it is so worth it. And it's like almost unbelievable that this slice is actually sugar-free, gluten-free, grain-free. It's so crazy how good this slice is. The layers are so delicious, each on their own, but together, oh my gosh, honestly, this is gonna blow your mind. I hope you guys enjoy making this slice. I know that there's a little bit of work involved, but I promise it is so worth it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up because the support means the world to me. And if you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe because I upload new videos every single week. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!